Millionaire passes away with will in hand, and what her heirs find out leaves everyone astonished. Hello. You are very welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. The atmosphere in the lavishly appointed living room was heavy with an unspoken tension as Jake and Madison Hart sat across from each other. The opulence that surrounded them, with its grand chandeliers and plush velvet furnishings, felt like a mockery of their current state. Just days ago, they had lost their mother, Evelyn Hart, a woman who had not only built an empire but had also been the emotional cornerstone of their lives. Now, they were left to grapple with the weight of her death and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Jake, always the more competitive of the two, was fidgeting in his seat, his jaw clenched tightly. He couldn't shake the feeling of indignation that bubbled beneath the surface. "I can't believe this is how she chose to do it," he blurted out, breaking the silence. "After everything we've been through, she leaves us with a bunch of games? It's ridiculous." Madison looked up from her hands, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Jake, she had her reasons. Maybe she wanted us to prove something, to ourselves. This might be her way of guiding us." Her voice was steady, but she could feel her heart racing. She had always been the softer of the two, and the idea of her mother's last wish being a test weighed heavily on her. "Guide us? By making us jump through hoops? I don't get it. We're supposed to be inheriting a fortune, not playing some twisted reality game," Jake retorted, his voice rising in frustration. "What's the point of all this?" Before Madison could respond, the door swung open, and in walked Charles, the family attorney. He was a tall man with an air of authority that seemed to command respect. His demeanor was serious, and as he settled into the chair opposite the siblings, the weight of the moment intensified. "Jake Madison," he began, his voice low and deliberate, "thank you for being here today. I know this is a difficult time for both of you." He cleared his throat, glancing at the stack of papers in front of him. "Your mother left behind a detailed will, and it is my responsibility to share her wishes with you." Jake leaned forward, his impatience palpable. "Let's get to it then. What did she leave us?" Charles took a deep breath. "Evelyn's fortune, as you both know, is substantial. However, she wanted to ensure that her legacy went beyond just monetary value. Therefore, she has set forth a series of challenges that you must complete before any of the inheritance is transferred." Madison felt a chill run down her spine. "Challenges? What kind of challenges?" Charles continued, unflinching. "The first task is to raise a significant amount of funds for a charity event that your mother supported throughout her life. This event is important to her, and she believed that both of you needed to understand the value of giving back." Jake's face twisted in disbelief. "So what? We're supposed to turn this into a competition? This is insane." Madison, however, was intrigued. "Maybe she's trying to teach us something, Jake. This could be an opportunity to honor her memory." "Honor her memory? By playing nice at a charity event? This is ridiculous." Jake shot back, his frustration mounting. He could hardly wrap his mind around the idea that his mother, who had always been the driving force in their lives, had now turned their inheritance into a twisted game of sorts. "Your mother wanted you to confront your ambitions and rivalries," Charles interjected calmly. "She believed that through these challenges, you would not only honor her legacy but also grow as individuals." Madison nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe we can use this as a way to reconnect, Jake. We've been so distant for years. Perhaps this is her way of bringing us together." Jake rolled his eyes, dismissing her optimism. "I don't need a charity event to connect with you. If she wanted to bring us together, she should have just left us the money." "Jake!" Madison exclaimed, her voice rising in exasperation. "This isn't just about the money. It's about understanding who she was and the values she stood for." As the siblings continued to argue, Charles remained a silent observer, knowing that they had a long road ahead. The challenges laid before them would test not only their individual strengths, but also their relationship as siblings. With Evelyn's voice echoing in their minds, they were about to embark on a journey that would reveal the true essence of their mother's legacy, one that transcended wealth and delved into the depths of love, sacrifice, and unity. The grand ballroom of the elegant hotel was adorned with lavish floral arrangements and shimmering chandeliers, creating an atmosphere of opulence that contrasted sharply with the heaviness in Jake and Madison's hearts. As the guests mingled, laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but the siblings felt an unshakable tension between them. Jake, dressed in a tailored suit, surveyed the room with a competitive glint in his eye, while Madison, in a flowing gown, seemed more contemplative, her gaze drifting to the framed photos of their mother that decorated the walls. "Look at this place," Jake exclaimed, his voice rising above the chatter. "We should be able to raise a fortune tonight. I'll make sure of it." He adjusted his cufflinks, a determined smile plastered on his face. Madison sighed, crossing her arms as she leaned against a nearby wall. "It's not just about the money, Jake. This event is about honoring Mom. We need to connect with the people who loved her, not just chase after donations." "Connect? You really think that's going to work in a room full of rich donors?" Jake shot back, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "They want to see results, not heartfelt speeches. I'll handle the fundraising, and you can do your emotional connection thing if you want." Madison's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, a familiar face approached them. It was Mrs. Thompson, an old family friend, her silver hair neatly styled and her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Jake, Madison, it's so lovely to see you both," she said, enveloping them in a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud of you tonight." "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," Madison replied, her voice tinged with genuine appreciation. "It means a lot to see everyone here." As the evening unfolded, Jake took charge, diving headfirst into conversations with potential donors. He presented his pitch with enthusiasm, showcasing extravagant auction items and exclusive experiences. Imagine a weekend getaway at the Hart Estate, or a private dinner with a celebrity chef. "All proceeds go to a cause that was dear to our mother," he declared, gesturing animatedly. Madison, meanwhile, moved through the crowd with grace, engaging guests in heartfelt conversations. She shared stories about their mother's philanthropic work, recounting how Evelyn had once helped a struggling family in their community. "My mom believed in giving back," she told a small group, her voice soft yet compelling. "She always said that true wealth comes from the impact we make on others' lives." As the night progressed, the siblings' contrasting approaches became more evident. Jake thrived on the thrill of competition, while Madison sought to foster genuine connections. They occasionally crossed paths, but their conversations were charged with unspoken tension. "Madison, look at those people over there." Jake pointed to a cluster of wealthy guests. "They're ready to donate. We need to be aggressive if we want to make this a success. And alienate everyone in the process? That's not how Mom would have wanted this," Madison countered, exasperated. "We can't just treat this like a business deal." Their heated discussion was interrupted when a former colleague of their mother's approached them, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Jenkins. "Ah, Jake, Madison, I have to tell you, your mother was an extraordinary woman. I remember when she organized that fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. She had a way of making everyone feel valued," he reminisced. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins," Jake said, forcing a smile. "We're hoping to continue her legacy tonight." Madison watched as Jake's expression softened momentarily before he returned to his businesslike demeanor. "Let's focus on the auction. I've got a few high-profile guests I need to speak to," he said, his voice clipped. As the night drew to a close, the brothers and sisters stood together on the stage, preparing to announce the total amount raised. But as Jake opened his mouth to speak, he felt a pang of uncertainty. The event had not gone as planned. "Tonight's turnout may not have met our expectations," he began, glancing at Madison, who stood beside him, her expression earnest. "But I believe we've managed to honor our mother's memory in our own ways." Madison stepped forward, her heart racing. "We may not have raised as much as we hoped, but we've created connections that matter. Mom always said that real change starts with understanding and compassion. The audience erupted in applause, but Jake felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. It wasn't just about the money anymore. He realized that they had both missed the essence of what their mother truly valued. As the applause faded, the siblings exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps their paths to honoring Evelyn's legacy might not be so different after all. After the charity event had ended in disappointment, the tension between Jake and Madison hung in the air like a thick fog. Each sibling felt the weight of their mother's absence more acutely than ever. The luxurious surroundings of their mother's estate felt suffocating, laden with expectations and unspoken words. Jake sat alone in the dimly lit study, the echoes of the evening's arguments still ringing in his ears. He glanced at the ornate bookshelves lining the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that had once seemed inviting. Now, they felt like a museum of memories he'd rather forget. Just as he was about to drown in his thoughts, he spotted something unusual on the desk. A leather-bound journal, slightly worn at the edges, tucked beneath a stack of papers. Curiosity piqued. He reached for it, feeling an inexplicable pull. He opened the journal, revealing his mother's elegant handwriting. The first entry spoke of her early struggles and dreams. As he read, he found himself transported back in time to a version of Evelyn he had never known, one unencumbered by wealth and status. "Mom," he whispered to himself, his voice cracking. "What were you thinking?" Meanwhile, Madison was in her room, grappling with her own emotions. She sat cross-legged on her bed, staring at a blank canvas that seemed to mock her. The paintbrush in her hand felt heavy, an anchor to her frustrations. In a moment of impulse, she decided to take a break and clear her mind. As she walked through the mansion, she paused outside her mother's old art studio, drawn by a flickering light. Inside, she found the remnants of her mother's creative spirit, paints, brushes, and half-finished canvases. But it was the sight of an old box that caught her attention. Opening it, she discovered letters addressed to her and Jake, written by their mother. Each letter began with an affectionate, "My dear children," and contained wishes for their future, filled with hope and love. Madison felt her heart swell with a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. "Why didn't I see this before?" she murmured to herself, tracing the words with her fingers. The next day, the siblings found themselves in the kitchen, both nursing cups of coffee but avoiding eye contact. The air was thick with unsaid apologies and unresolved feelings. Finally, Jake broke the silence, his voice low and hesitant. "Did you read Mom's journal?" he asked, glancing at her with a mix of vulnerability and fear. "I found her letters," Madison replied, her eyes locking onto his. "She wanted us to be close, Jake. She believed in us." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the journal still clutched in his hand. I thought if I succeeded, she'd be proud. But it feels like I'm chasing shadows." Madison leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "It's not about success. She wanted us to understand her sacrifices, to appreciate what really matters." "I know that now," Jake confessed, his voice trembling. "But reading her words made me realize how much I've let rivalry cloud our relationship." The revelation hung between them, a fragile bridge slowly forming over the chasm of their past. Madison took a deep breath, determined to pursue this newfound connection. What if we worked together? We could honor her memory instead of competing against each other. Jake looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Together? You really think we can do that?" "I do," she said, her voice steady. "Let's figure out what she wanted for us, not just in terms of money, but in terms of love and unity." As they began to discuss their mother's dreams and aspirations, the conversation shifted from blame to understanding. They shared stories about Evelyn, recalling the moments that made them laugh and cry. For the first time, they were not just siblings bound by rivalry but partners in a quest to honor their mother's legacy. "I found something in her journal that really struck me," Jake said, his expression earnest. She wrote about how she always wanted us to support each other, no matter what. Madison nodded, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. Then let's do it. Let's make her proud, not with money, but with what we create together. In that moment, the seeds of reconciliation were planted. They stood on the precipice of change, ready to confront the challenges that lay ahead with a newfound sense of purpose and unity. The rich tapestry of their mother's life began to weave itself into their own, guiding them toward a future filled with possibilities. The tension in the air was thick as the siblings faced the reality of their second challenge. Jake and Madison found themselves in the spacious art studio their mother had once frequented, surrounded by canvases, brushes, and the faint scent of turpentine. A large easel stood in the center, waiting to be filled with the vision of their mother's legacy. It was an opportunity for them to express not just their artistic abilities, but their understanding of who Evelyn Hart had been. Madison stepped forward, her heart racing with excitement. "This is our chance to create something that truly represents her," she said, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. "I want to paint a mural that shows her love for the community and all the lives she touched." Jake, arms crossed and brow furrowed, rolled his eyes. "That's great, Maddie, but we need something that stands out. Something that will impress the judges and prove we're the best. I'm thinking a bold sculpture that signifies power and wealth. Something that screams Evelyn Hart." Madison sighed, feeling the familiar pang of frustration at her brother's competitive nature. "You know, Jake, this isn't just about winning. It's about honoring Mom's memory. She cared about helping people, not just making a statement." "Yeah, well, maybe if you focused more on winning, we wouldn't be in this mess," Jake snapped back defensively. "You always want to play nice, but that won't help us inherit anything." Madison's heart sank at his words. "It's not just about inheriting money, Jake. Can't you see that? We should be embracing what she stood for instead of turning this into a competition." "Embracing what she stood for?" Jake threw his hands up in exasperation. "You mean being the good child? You're so caught up in that idea that you're missing the point. We need to show that we can create something better than what she ever did." As they began to separate to work on their projects, the atmosphere grew heavier. Jake set to work on his grand vision, meticulously shaping his sculpture out of clay, trying to channel his frustration into the art itself. Each push and pull of his hands seemed to echo the conflict within him. Meanwhile, Madison gathered her paints, feeling a sense of calm wash over her as she envisioned her mural. She wanted it to tell a story, to depict the love and kindness their mother had shown to everyone around her. Days passed, and the rivalry between the siblings intensified. Jake worked late into the night, often losing track of time as he sculpted fiercely, while Madison poured her heart into the vibrant colors of her mural. They barely exchanged words, the silence filled with unspoken tension. One evening, fueled by a mix of exhaustion and irritation, Jake stormed into the studio, his frustration boiling over. "Why does everything have to be so sentimental with you?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "You think just because you paint pretty pictures, it means something? Art is about impact, not just feelings." "Impact?" Madison shot back, her voice trembling. "You think cramming in flashy designs will make you better? Art should come from the heart, Jake. You're missing the whole point." In a moment of reckless anger, Jake turned towards Madison's mural, his eyes narrowing. "You're just scared of real competition, aren't you?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. In a sudden burst of frustration, he knocked over a can of paint, the bright red splattering across her work and ruining days of effort. "Jake, what have you done?" Madison gasped, her heart dropping as she stared at the mess. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she took in the destruction of her creation. "I didn't mean to," Jake stammered, but the damage was done. The vibrant colors that had been a tribute to their mother's spirit were now marred and chaotic. I just wanted you to see that we can't let this be about emotions. It has to be about winning." Madison turned away, her heart aching not just for her ruined mural, But for the brother she felt was slipping further away from her. You don't get it, Jake. This isn't just about us. It's about Mom and what she wanted for us. We're supposed to be working together, not tearing each other apart. Jake stood frozen, guilt washing over him as he processed her words. But instead of apologizing, he retreated into his own frustration, unable to bridge the gap that had grown between them. The siblings were left standing in the aftermath of their conflict, surrounded by chaos, both in the studio and in their hearts, uncertain of how to reconnect in the face of their growing rivalry. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the sprawling estate of the late Evelyn Hart. Inside the grand living room, Jake and Madison sat across from each other, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a knife. They had just received the news of their next challenge, and the weight of their mother's expectations loomed heavily over them. Can you believe this? Jake scoffed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. She wants us to choose between a community project and a lucrative investment? It's ridiculous. Money is what we need right now. Madison crossed her arms, her brow furrowed with concern. Jake, you're missing the point. Mom always believed in giving back. This project is about helping people, not just lining our pockets. Jake leaned forward, his voice rising with agitation. Helping people? That's great and all, but we're in a tough spot. I don't see how throwing money at a community project is going to solve anything for us. We should be focusing on what will actually benefit us in the long run. Madison shook her head, her heart racing with frustration. You really think that's all Mom cared about? Money? She dedicated her life to uplifting others. Don't you remember the stories she told us? The people she helped? I remember her helping people, Jake replied, his tone defensive. But I also remember the sacrifices she made for us to have what we have. We can't just throw that away for some sentimental project. Madison sighed deeply, feeling the weight of their mother's legacy pressing down on her. It's not about throwing anything away. It's about honoring her values, Jake. What kind of legacy do we want to leave? One of greed or one of compassion? As the siblings argued, the atmosphere in the room grew increasingly charged. Jake rose to pace the room, his mind racing. You don't get it. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about survival. If we don't secure our finances now, we could lose everything. Is that what you really believe? Madison shot back, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. That money is all that matters? I thought you were better than this. Jake stopped in his tracks, his expression shifting from anger to confusion. What do you want from me, Madison? I'm trying to be practical here. Madison's eyes softened as she saw the struggle within her brother. I want you to see the bigger picture. We can make a difference, Jake. Together. That's what Mom wanted for us. I can't help but think that if we choose the investment, we'll be betraying her memory. Jake ran a hand over his face, suddenly feeling the weight of the conversation. Maybe you're right, he muttered, his voice quieter now. But I feel so lost. It's like I'm stuck between wanting to honor her and wanting to secure my future. The future is important, Madison said gently, but so is how we get there. If we choose the money, what does that say about us? About what we learned from her? He looked away, his mind racing as memories of their mother flooded back. The time she had volunteered her time, the stories of families she had helped get back on their feet, and the passion she had for making the world a better place. He remembered how she would light up when talking about community projects, how those stories always inspired him to want to do more. I just don't want to end up like her, Jake finally confessed, his voice trembling. All her hard work, and in the end, she was never truly happy. I don't want to sacrifice my own happiness for some idealistic dream. Madison leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. But that's the thing, Jake. Mom found joy in her work, in helping others. Maybe we can find that same joy if we let go of our need for validation through wealth. It's not too late to change the narrative. Jake's gaze dropped to the floor as he contemplated her words. I don't know if I can do that. You can, she urged, her voice warm and encouraging. We can do this together. Let's honor her legacy by making a choice that reflects her values. We owe her that much." In that moment, the tension between them began to dissipate, replaced by a shared understanding of their mother's true wishes. As they sat there, the enormity of the decision loomed over them like a shadow, but for the first time, they felt a glimmer of hope that they could navigate it together, honoring their mother's legacy while also discovering their own paths forward. Madison stepped into the community center, the walls adorned with vibrant murals depicting scenes of unity and resilience. The air was thick with warmth, filled with laughter and the scent of freshly baked goods wafting from the kitchen. It was a stark contrast to the cold, polished surfaces of the hard estate that she had come to despise. As she walked further inside, she could hear the chatter of children playing and the soft hum of adults discussing the upcoming community event, a fundraiser Evelyn had championed tirelessly. "Madison!" a voice called out, breaking her reverie. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had known Evelyn for years. Her eyes sparkled with recognition and affection. "Oh dear, it's so lovely to see you. Your mother would be so proud of you continuing her work here." "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," Madison replied, her heart swelling slightly. "I just wanted to see how everything was going and lend a hand." "Come, let me show you around," Mrs. Thompson said, taking her by the arm. As they walked, Mrs. Thompson shared stories of how Evelyn had transformed the community center, turning it into a hub for education and support. "Your mother believed everyone deserved a chance, no matter where they came from," she said, her voice filled with nostalgia. "She encouraged so many to pursue their dreams." Madison listened intently, her mind racing. She had always known about her mother's charitable work, but hearing the impact it had on real lives was something else entirely. It was as if a light was flickering on inside her, illuminating the path her mother had carved through love and determination. Meanwhile, Jake sat in a lavish boardroom, surrounded by executives who spoke with dollar signs in their eyes. He had been invited to pitch a new investment opportunity, and while the room buzzed with excitement, he felt an unsettling emptiness. "This is your chance, Jake," one of the executives urged, leaning forward with a glint of greed in his eyes. "This could be your biggest win yet." "Yeah," Jake replied, but his mind drifted to Madison and the community center. The contrast was stark. Here, everyone was eager to amass wealth while Madison was trying to uplift those who had little. As he glanced at the financial reports in front of him, he felt a twinge of guilt. Was this really what he wanted? As the meeting progressed, Jake's thoughts wandered back to the conversations he had had with Madison about their mother. He remembered her words, "It's not about what you have, but what you give." But in that moment, surrounded by potential profits, he felt torn. Later, Madison found herself at a round table filled with eager faces, children and their families, all gathered to discuss the upcoming event. She smiled at the excited chatter, feeling a sense of purpose. "Okay, everyone, let's brainstorm some ideas for our fundraising activities," she encouraged. A young boy raised his hand enthusiastically. "What if we have a talent show? My sister can sing." "That's a fantastic idea," Madison responded, her enthusiasm infectious. "And we can charge a small entry fee." "What other ideas do we have?" As the group continued to brainstorm, Madison felt a rush of joy. This was what her mother had fought for: community, connection, and support. The laughter and energy around her were a stark reminder of what truly mattered. After the meeting, she stepped outside, feeling invigorated. Just then, she spotted Jake across the street, his face a mixture of frustration and contemplation. She approached him, her heart pounding. "Jake, what are you doing here?" He looked up, surprised. "I just needed some air. It's crazy in there." His voice was tight, revealing the tension he felt. "Come on, let's talk," Madison said gently, guiding him away from the noise of the street. They found a quiet bench in a nearby park, the sounds of laughter and distant music creating a comforting backdrop. "Madison, I don't know what I'm doing anymore," Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I keep thinking about what Mom would want, and I feel so lost. Madison searched his eyes, seeing the turmoil within him. I think she wanted us to understand what really matters. It's not just about the money. It's about making a difference, connecting with people. I don't want to lose everything, he confessed, his vulnerability disarming. But seeing you here, it makes me realize I've been so focused on the wrong things. Madison placed her hand on his. We can figure this out together, Jake. Mom believed in us, in our potential to do good. For the first time in a long while, Jake felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps the path forward was not one of isolation and competition, but of understanding and collaboration. They sat in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them, but for the first time, it felt like they were on the same side. The atmosphere in the opulent mansion was thick with tension as Jake and Madison gathered in the grand living room, the flickering flames of the fireplace casting shadows on their faces. The final challenge loomed ahead, one that would determine not just their fate but the very essence of their relationship as siblings. The letter that had arrived earlier that day sat on the coffee table, its elegant script a reminder of their mother's influence even in death. $10 million, Jake muttered, his voice low and contemplative. He ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the decision pressing heavily upon him. That could solve every problem I have. I could finally start that venture I've been thinking about, get out of the shadow of this family's expectations. Madison crossed her arms, her brow furrowed in disapproval. And what will that solve, Jake? Money doesn't buy happiness. Mom wanted us to recognize what truly matters. It's about the legacy she left behind, the love and unity she fought for, not just the cash. Jake scoffed, his frustration bubbling to the surface. You think that's going to pay the bills? Just because she was generous doesn't mean we have to be. Besides, what good is a legacy if we're broke? We can't honor her memory when we're struggling to get by. It's not just about money. Madison shot back, her voice rising. Mom believed in making a difference, in giving back. Do you really think she'd want us to squander her life's work for a quick payout? He shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and confusion. You're being naive, Maddie. This isn't just a game. We're standing on the edge of our future. You don't have to worry about money, but I do. I've always had to. You don't understand what it's like to feel like you're constantly fighting for a place in this world. Madison's eyes softened as she took a step closer to him, her voice dropping to a more soothing tone. I do understand, Jake. We're both fighting our own battles. You think I don't feel the weight of this family's expectations? I've always been in your shadow, trying to prove myself as an artist while you chase after success in business. But maybe we're looking at this all wrong. Jake looked at her, his defensiveness waning. What do you mean? What if we consider our mother's true legacy? She wanted us to be united, to support each other. Choosing the symbolic legacy could actually strengthen our bond. And that's worth more than any amount of money, Madison suggested, her voice steady and firm. United? Jake echoed, the word rolling off his tongue as if it were foreign. But we've never been united. All we do is argue and compete. What makes you think that would change now? Because we have a chance, she replied passionately, gesturing toward the letter. We can decide to move forward together instead of apart. We can choose to honor her by creating something meaningful, something that reflects who we are as a family. That's the real inheritance, not just wealth. Jake's expression shifted as he considered her words. The thought of a genuine connection with Madison, of finally breaking free from the toxic cycle of rivalry, began to take hold. But what if I choose the money? What if it really does change everything for me? Then you'll have $10 million, but at what cost? Madison challenged, her eyes locked onto his. Will you be happy? Will you feel fulfilled? Or will you just be chasing after something that never truly satisfies? Jake turned away, staring into the fireplace as if seeking answers from the flames. The heat of the fire reminded him of the warmth he had felt as a child, the moments when their family had truly been together, laughing and sharing stories. I don't know if I can let go of the money, Maddie. It feels like the safe choice. Safe isn't always right, Jake, she said softly, her heart aching for him. Sometimes, the hardest choices lead to the greatest rewards. Mom taught us that. He closed his eyes, the internal battle raging within him. I just want to make the right choice for once. Madison stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then let's make it together. Let's choose the legacy of love and unity. It's what she would have wanted for us. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within Jake. Perhaps it was time to redefine what success meant, time to embrace the bond he had long neglected. The decision loomed ahead, but for the first time, he felt he wasn't alone in facing it. Madison sat on the edge of her bed, the soft glow of the bedside lamp illuminating the pages of her mother's diary. She had found it tucked away in a corner of the study, hidden beneath old photographs and forgotten mementos. As she flipped through the pages, her heart raced. Each entry was a window into Evelyn's soul, filled with thoughts and reflections that revealed the woman she had been beyond the titles of mother and billionaire. "Mom," Madison whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I wish I had known you like this." The words hung in the air, heavy with longing. The writing was intimate, revealing the hopes and dreams Evelyn had for her children. Madison's fingers traced the words as if she could feel her mother's presence. One entry caught her eye. Asterisk, I hope they understand that my love for them is greater than any fortune I could ever leave behind. Asterisk, tears welled up in her eyes. This was the essence of her mother's true legacy, a legacy that transcended money and material success. Just then, Jake barged into the room, his expression a mix of frustration and confusion. "What are you doing in here, Maddie?" he snapped, his voice echoing with the remnants of their previous argument. "We need to focus on the challenges, not on this." He gestured dismissively towards the diary. Madison looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Jake, you don't understand. This isn't just a diary. It's a glimpse into Mom's heart. She wanted us to know her, not just the businesswoman everyone saw, but the mother who loved us deeply." Jake rolled his eyes, his impatience evident. "What good is that going to do? We need to win this thing, not sit around reminiscing about the good old days. We're losing time." "Winning?" Madison echoed, her voice rising. "Is that all you care about? What if winning means losing sight of who we are? Mom wanted us to be united, not divided by competition." Jake clenched his fists, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You think I don't want to honor her? I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. This is about the money, Maddie. It's about securing our future." "Is it really?" she challenged, her voice steady now. "Or is it about proving you're better than me? Because that's what it feels like." For a moment, silence fell between them, heavy and charged. Jake's face softened, and he took a breath, trying to quell the storm inside him. I don't want to end up like her, alone and misunderstood." Madison's heart ached for her brother. "You're not alone, Jake. We're in this together." Mom's diary shows that she believed in us. She wanted us to stand by each other. Jake's gaze drifted down to the diary in her hands, and he took a step closer, curiosity peeking through the cracks of his anger. "What else does it say?" Madison opened to another page, reading aloud softly. Asterisk, "I fear that my ambitions will create a rift between my children. I hope they find strength in each other, not in rivalry." Asterisk, Jake winced, the weight of their mother's fears pressing down on him. "She worried about us," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought." "Neither did I," Madison admitted. "But maybe it's time we start thinking differently. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about what she wanted. We have to honor her wishes, not just her wealth." He looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, the walls between them began to crumble. "What if we worked together? What if we combined our strengths instead of competing?" Madison smiled through her tears, the tension in the room dissipating like mist in the morning sun. "I'd like that. Let's figure out how to truly honor her together. Jake nodded, an understanding passing between them. They both felt the weight of their mother's love surrounding them, an invisible thread pulling them closer. With renewed determination, they sat on the floor, the diary opened between them, ready to embrace the true legacy of Evelyn Hart, one of love, unity, and understanding. The air was thick with tension as Jake and Madison stood in the grand hall of their mother's estate, the weight of the impending decision pressing down on them. The opulent surroundings, once a symbol of their wealth and privilege, now felt suffocating. Jake paced back and forth, running a hand through his disheveled hair, while Madison sat on the edge of a marble fountain, her fingers nervously tapping against the cool stone. Jake finally stopped, facing his sister. Madison, we can't just throw away $10 million. Think about what we could do with that money. I could finally get my startup off the ground, he argued, his voice rising with urgency. Madison looked up at him, her expression a mix of frustration and sorrow. And what about what Mom wanted for us? This isn't just about money, Jake. It's about understanding her legacy and what she truly valued. You know that. Jake let out a scoff, crossing his arms defensively. You're just saying that because you want to play the martyr. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We could change our lives forever. Change our lives. Madison shot back, standing up now, her eyes blazing. Is that really what you think this is about? Mom didn't work her whole life just for us to inherit a fortune and squander it on greed. She taught us to care for others, to give back. Do you even remember the stories the guests shared at the charity event? Jake clenched his jaw, memories of the night flooding back, the laughter, the tears, the stories of how their mother had touched so many lives. Yet, he felt trapped between two worlds, the allure of wealth and the nagging voice of conscience. Those stories don't pay the bills, Madison. They don't solve our problems, he muttered, his tone softer, but still defensive. Madison stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. But they give our lives meaning. If we choose the money, what kind of people will we become? Mom wanted us to unite, to become better versions of ourselves. Can't you see that? He looked away, the internal struggle evident on his face. I don't know if I can let go of the money. It feels like a safety net, something tangible. Safety? Madison shook her head, her heart aching for her brother. You think money will keep you safe? It didn't keep us safe from losing Mom. It didn't bring us together when we needed each other the most. We have to ask ourselves what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Do we want to be known as her children who squandered her love for the sake of money? Jake's defenses began to crumble. The passion in Madison's voice struck a chord deep within him. I thought if I had enough money, everything would be easier. I could finally prove myself. Madison stepped back, allowing him a moment to process. Jake, proving yourself doesn't require money. It requires strength, integrity, and love. Mom would want us to choose the path that honors her, not just the one that fills our pockets. Silence enveloped them, the gravity of their mother's teachings hanging heavily in the air. Jake felt the tension in his chest ease slightly, replaced by a flicker of understanding. What if we chose the legacy instead? He whispered, as if saying the words out loud would make them real. Madison's heart raced at his admission. You mean it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You'd choose love over money? Jake took a deep breath, his eyes finally meeting hers. I want to, but it's terrifying. I've always associated worth with what I have, not who I am. Madison reached out, squeezing his hand. Then let's redefine what worth means together. We can honor Mom's memory by creating something beautiful from this pain. We owe it to her and to ourselves. In that moment, Jake felt a shift within him, a realization that had been lurking beneath the surface for too long. The love he felt for his sister overshadowed his fear of losing financial security. Okay, he said, his voice steadier now. Let's do it. Let's choose the legacy. Madison smiled through her tears, a sense of relief washing over her. Together, then. Whatever comes next, we face it as a family. As they stood side by side, hands clasped, a wave of hope filled the air, solidifying their bond. They were ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, united not just by blood, but by a shared purpose that would honor their mother's true legacy. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the living room where Jake and Madison stood, a heavy silence filled the air. They had just come from a whirlwind of emotions, each grappling with the weight of their mother's legacy. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. Jake exchanged a glance with Madison, both of them unsure of what to expect. "I'll get it," Jake said, his voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He opened the door to find a courier holding a plain, unmarked envelope. The courier nodded, handing it over without a word, and Jake felt a strange sense of foreboding as he closed the door behind him. "What is it?" Madison asked, her eyes widening as she noticed the envelope in Jake's hands. "Is it from the lawyer?" "I don't know," Jake replied, turning the envelope over in his hands. "It looks personal." With a deep breath, he broke the seal and pulled out a USB drive. Madison leaned closer, her heart racing. "What's on it?" "Let's find out," he said, already moving towards the living room's entertainment system. He plugged the drive in, and after a few moments of loading, the screen flickered to life. They were greeted by the familiar image of their mother, Evelyn Hart, her face radiating warmth and love. "Hello, my dearest Jake and Madison," Evelyn began, her voice soothing yet full of authority. "If you're watching this, it means you've reached the final challenge I set for you. You've been through so much, and I want to take this moment to share something very important." Madison felt her heart swell with a mixture of love and sorrow as she listened, tears brimming in her eyes. Jake clenched his fists, feeling the weight of regret pressing down on him. "Throughout my life, I often prioritized my work and my ambitions," Evelyn continued, her tone growing serious. "I sacrificed a lot, but I never wanted to sacrifice the bond between you two. My greatest wish was for you to understand that true wealth lies not in money, but in love, family, and the support you give one another." Jake swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Mom, I wish I'd understood that sooner," he whispered, more to himself than to the screen. Madison shot him a glance, her heart aching for the brother who had been her fiercest rival. "I know you both are at a crossroads," Evelyn's voice enveloped them, a gentle reminder of her presence. "If you choose the $10 million, you will have financial security, but it will come at a cost. If you choose the legacy of love and unity, you will have each other, but it might not be the easy path." Madison wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice trembling as she said, "We've fought so hard for this money, Mom. But now I see it differently." Jake's expression shifted, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "What if we chose the money, and it drove us apart even more?" he murmured. Evelyn smiled gently from the screen. "Remember, my loves, the choice is yours. But let me remind you of something. I left a condition. If you choose the money, it will go to charity, an organization that aligns with my values. You will not inherit a single cent. But if you choose the legacy, you will inherit something far more valuable, the strength of family." The siblings exchanged glances, the weight of her words sinking in. Madison felt a rush of clarity wash over her. "She wants us to realize what really matters," she said softly. "It's not about the money. It never was." Jake's heart raced as he processed the revelation. "I've been so focused on proving myself, on winning this competition, that I lost sight of what Mom truly wanted for us," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you, Maddie." Madison stepped closer, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We're not lost, Jake. We just need to find our way back to each other." As the video played on, Evelyn's final words hung in the air like a warm embrace. "I love you both. Please, choose wisely. Remember, my legacy is one of love, unity, and the strength that comes from being a family." With the screen fading to black, Jake and Madison stood in silence, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. In that moment, they understood that the true inheritance wasn't measured in dollars, but in the bond they had forged through shared struggles and revelations. "Let's choose the legacy," Jake finally said, his voice steady. "Together." Madison nodded, a determined smile breaking through her tears. "Together," she echoed, feeling a sense of hope bloom within her. In that instant, they found not just a resolution, but a renewed commitment to each other. A promise to honor their mother's memory by embracing the love and unity she had always wanted for them. I sincerely hope that you were enchanted by this story. I'm sure the next video that appears to you will also touch your heart. So, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our next stories. A big hug and see you next time.